we are going to move on. So I want to start by saying welcome back. And to introduce Mike Fisher, who is Chief Technology Officer at Etsy. I also want to take one moment, because I keep forgetting, I want to thank Kerry Holloway with BNY Mellon, who is on our board, who helped put together the previous panel. And I want to thank Kara Shembri, who is on our BBB board with Etsy, who has helped to make this presentation possible. So Mike is in charge of Etsy's technology strategy and leads the effort to scale its global platform. He has written extensively about business growth and scalability, and is going to share his insights about Etsy's corporate responsibility journey and how technology is helping to keep it human in e-commerce. Following his remarks, Mike will be joined, well, he is already joined at the panel with Alyssa Meyer, who is Manager of Public Policy and Research at Etsy. Alyssa manages Etsy's public policy and social impact programs and is a member of its advocacy team. Following their conversation, we will have a Q&A. So again, please think of your questions and write them down as they are speaking. So afterwards, they'll answer as many as they can. And with that, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having us here today. I'm super excited to be here and excited to talk about how Etsy keeps commerce human through technology and advocacy. And also why responsible energy usage is so important today. And of course, how Etsy looks at this in a very holistic manner. So a little bit about Etsy, if you don't know, we're a global marketplace in almost every single country around the world. We have over 2 million sellers. Most of them, 87%, identify as women, selling 50 million items. And these are items that are made by artists, craftsmen, handmade vintage items. And we sell them to over almost 35 billion buyers. And last year, we had over $3 billion in sales across the marketplace. And it is really about taking the sellers and helping them find the buyers who fall in love with their creative items and want to buy that something special. And that's what the marketplace does. But we are, first and foremost, a technology company. That technology drives that marketplace. I often say that the marketplace is the tip of the iceberg, and we really have all these systems behind it driving that around big data, machine learning, which I'm going to talk a little bit about today. But as a technology company, when you see statistics like this, that the IT sector is consuming 7% of the global energy, and they predict that will either increase by 3 up to 10-fold in the next little over a decade, that's concerning. And it raises the question of, are we doing things in the IT and the technology sector in a responsible manner? So what is driving all of this growth? What's consuming all the electricity? As I mentioned, that Etsy, the marketplace is the front end that everyone sees, but what really drives that is big data. So we generate over 1 billion events per day. So people joining the site, listing things, searching, favoriting, falling in love with it, buying it, all of that creates a massive amount of data that we then process with our data warehouses, and we turn that into information. And then we feed that off to our machine learning algorithms. But big data is not only in Etsy, it is pervasive around technology. On the internet, we generate 2.5 exabytes of data per day. And just to put that in a little perspective, 5 exabytes is all of the spoken words ever. From the first monosyllabic grunt to like the words that I'm talking now, 5 exabytes, we generate that every 2 days on the internet. So it's a massive amount of data that needs to be stored and computed and processed and served in all of this. So big data is really, really driving this. And if you look at some of the other statistics on the internet, every minute the Weather Channel gets 18 million requests for forecast. We consume 4.1 million videos every minute off of YouTube, and Google serves up 3.6 million searches every minute. So tons and tons of data that requires networks and servers and storage and all of that to be processed. So huge amounts of data. The other piece that's driving this is machine learning. And if you haven't heard of this, this is kind of the hottest new tech trend. You may have heard it called artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep networks, things like that. It is what is helping us to have self-driven cars and really advanced technologies like that. But the ideas for machine learning have been around for decades, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus decades. But the reason that it's viable now is because we have big data combined with cheap compute. And this combination has really allowed machine learning to sort of find its own and really become something that's very useful. At Etsy, I mentioned that we process those billions of events a day. We process that through machine learning engines. And what we do with that is we then improve our search results. We can have search results that are specific for you. We know about what you've done or what you've searched for or where you're located or your price sensitivity, any of that. We can make your search better. We can make recommendations better. We can fight fraud with machine learning. So we do all of this stuff with machine learning. But it's not just us. It's really across the industries. As I mentioned, automated cars and self-driving cars, very, very driven by that. But even consumer electronics. There's a French oral hygiene company that just released a toothbrush called Ara that has machine learning embedded in it that'll help your oral hygiene. It tells you if you're brushing well enough. So machine learning is really pervasive, and all of that is driving the need for more and more compute, which of course is more and more energy. The other big driver of this is global economics. That we in the US have gone through a multi-decade sort of tech boom, and we've seen the results of that, but other countries are just on the cusp of this. So to give a little bit of comparison, in the US we have 42,000 startups that last year was funded with about $48 billion. India has 5,000 startups, but $17 billion of funding flowed through last year. So you can see just by that level of funding, the disparity between the numbers, that there is a huge appetite in India for funding tech startups. So they are really right on the cusp of their technology boom. And we expect the results of that to see things like just in the next 2 or 3 years, the traffic on the internet to more than triple. And so that, of course, is driving more and more need for energy consumption. So raises this question of, are we doing this in a responsible manner? And at Etsy, our mission is to keep commerce human, right? It's part of our DNA. It describes how sellers and buyers communicate and how they connect. And the buyers can talk to the sellers and they can find out their backgrounds and their stories. How are they inspired by this? Can they customize it? Do they need something special for that wedding or that birthday or that anniversary? And the sellers, that communication, that's what the marketplace does, is it enables that. And this is built into our DNA, that a lot of companies have the CSR teams that try to append sustainability onto the projects and the initiatives and things. But for Etsy, it's actually part of our mission. And so if we did anything from how we consume food in our office places to how we heat and cool them to, of course, how we serve the marketplace and actually generate that for the users. If we did any of that without thinking about how to keep this human and how to make it sustainable, it wouldn't be right. We would feel like fraudsters. People would see through it. And so it is really part of our DNA. In fact, it's so much that last year we published our goals on sustainability. And so some of our goals that we published were 100% renewable energy by 2020 with a 25% reduction in energy consumption by 2025. And as the engineer, the technologist, that's a huge part of my organization's responsibility is to drive that because we're a large consumers of electricity. And of course, to develop plans. The marketplace, one of the things that have always concerned us is we're a global company and sellers ship products globally sometimes. And it's always concerned us to how does that impact with shipping these products around the world. And so we want to put a plan together around how to neutralize carbon impacts of that this year. And then run zero waste operations as a goal. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm helping to achieve that first goal. The cloud. So if you don't know what the cloud is in technology sector, the cloud are really large data centers and groups of data centers that are run by other companies, such as Amazon and Google and other companies like IBM and so forth, and Microsoft. And these clouds are they're just like our data centers, except they allow you to rent. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about our data centers, but we have to lease that space for a long period of time. In the cloud, this allows us to rent compute, storage, all these other services, not for a year or months, but down to minutes and even seconds. So if I need to store something for 90 seconds, I can rent that from one of these providers and then give it back. And the beauty of that is that someone else can then use it. And I don't have to keep that server or that storage or whatever running all the time for this. And so we announced in December last year that we're going to Google's cloud. Part of that decision was around their commitment to 100% renewable. That through their commitment, they allow us to partially achieve our goal for 100% renewable. And so that was a big determination. Of course, a lot of other factors went into that. We had hundreds of items on our decision matrix, but that was a large part of that. It really mattered to us that we could partner with someone that would have our goals around sustainability in mind. And so the other reasons we go to the cloud is that it's so much faster. So in our data centers, and we have right now thousands of servers in multiple data centers, but to get those servers in there, we have to plan for months. So we have to budget, we have to put them in order, we have to receive them, rack them, all this. And once they're in there, they never get turned off. We run them for their lifetime, which is typically a little over 3 years. They're turned on and running the entire time. I also can't share them. I can't share them with other people to use them when I don't need to. And so that's the problem with running in our own data center, is it doesn't give us the flexibility to release stuff or turn stuff down. So the graph to the upper left is a typical e-commerce cycle. So I mentioned we're global. We're in almost every single country around the world. But of course, we are US, Europe, North America centric. They're some of our largest markets. And so during the middle of the night, our usage goes down. And then, of course, during the daytime, East Coast, US time zones, we see that drive up. And then you see the commute. Everybody commutes back home. That's what the dip is. And then everyone's sitting around watching TV and shopping on Etsy later in the night, which we appreciate. And that's that second peak. And then it drops down again. So that's a typical e-commerce cycle. On the right-hand side is the idle CPU. So it's basically how free are our computers, our servers. And you'll see it's basically the inverse of that. So as traffic ramps up, the CPUs get busier, so they're less idle. And so it cycles through that as well. The bottom graph is our energy consumption at our data center. And you'll notice that it's flat. It doesn't cycle. And the issue with that is because the servers, even if they're not busy, are still consuming energy. And so that's one of the major issues in our own data centers, that our traffic cycles up and down. And of course, like almost all e-commerce, we're very seasonal as well. And so for the big holidays, demand spikes up several weeks before. And so again, we see huge seasonality shifts, huge daily shifts, and yet we can't be responsive in our own data centers. And so getting to the cloud allows us a ton of flexibility in this respect, that we can spin things up and spin things down. And again, when we release them, Google has the ability to then let someone else use them. So someone else who wants to serve traffic during the middle of the night can utilize those servers, and it frees up that capacity for them. As an example, I told you, sometimes it takes months to get a set of servers ordered and shipped. And at Google, we spun up 150 servers in about 4 minutes. So that's how fast we can have demand spun up, and then we can shut them down just as quickly. And so it gives us this huge amount of flexibility. And we're moving fast. We're moving fast that it allows us to move faster. When we have this flexibility, we can continue to innovate and move faster on our product development. But we're also moving fast to the cloud. So we announced in December of last year that we're moving to the cloud. We actually are already serving all of our images. So every image from Etsy that's online is served from the cloud right now. And we have a very aggressive timeline to get us into the cloud within 2 years. And so moving very fast. But moving to the cloud isn't the only way that we're working to achieve our sustainability goals. We also have entered into a power purchase agreement with another large tech company to purchase wind energy. So again, to help us ensure that we meet our goal of 100% renewable energy, we have initiatives like that. We happen to work in a building, I think it's the largest building that's LBC, which is Living Building Challenge certified. It's a very aggressive policy around sustainable workplace, and we work in a building that they specifically designed for that. We have open source software called Divertsy, which we use for recyclables and composting and things like that within our office space. We've open sourced that so that other companies can make use of it. And then, of course, we do privacy and advocacy work. And so to talk a little bit more about that, I'd like to invite up Alyssa Meyer. She is the manager of our public policy and research, and she's going to talk a little bit more about our advocacy.
Thank you, Mike. I feel like I finally understand the cloud, like not even kidding. So as Mike outlined, we at Etsy lead by example in a lot of the work that we do. And of course, we jump in when we feel like we can make a difference in the public policy and advocacy space. So for example, recently we submitted comments on the Department of Energy's proposed grid resiliency pricing plan, which we thought was a bad idea. So we let the Department of Energy know our thoughts and feelings about that through the public comment process, and we're happy to say that they actually pulled the rule after several companies and individuals submitted public comments. So that's just an example of the work that we do from the Etsy Inc. perspective, which is about 20% of my work. The other is for Etsy sellers, which are the reason that we come to work every day. So Mike outlined in the beginning who our sellers are. We're about 2 million sellers across the world, 87% of whom are women. Some more fun facts to sort of show you this community of amazing individuals that we work with. For 32%, their creative business, both on and off the platform, is their sole occupation, their full-time thing. And for the rest, it's a really meaningful source of supplemental income. On average, it contributes 13% in the US to their average household income. So it's really meaningful. They could spend it however they please, and oftentimes it's supporting other activities and also just fulfilling a creative itch or passion. 97% of sellers operate out of their homes, which is really incredible because they are, at home, perhaps in a second bedroom or just in their living room, fulfilling these orders and shipping globally across the world. So international exporters in their own right, which when we talk about from a public policy perspective often confuses even the best and well-intentioned policymakers. Because often when you think of small business, you think of a mom and pop shop on Main Street or a tech startup at first and things like that. But Etsy sellers are really a new face of creative entrepreneurship and kind of a new breath of light in this gig economy and future of work. And also 77% of our sellers are businesses of one. And often if they do have help, it's a partner or a friend who's helping fulfilling orders around the holiday times or things like that. So those are the people that we come to work every day. My team is the advocacy and impact team, and we advocate on all things having to do with Etsy sellers, and that ranges from all levels of government as well. We do a lot of local work on our impact side of our team, all the way up to attending events at the WTO and UN and international work as well. And we really work to craft support for policies that work, no matter how you work. And that ranges from issues like net neutrality, taxes, international shipping and trade, and economic security, and anything having to do with micro business, which is a bit different than small business issues. So you're probably wondering what this looks like, and we have some fun examples of some work that we do, which is on the top is a big campaign around net neutrality that we've done. So far this year, it's only June, and we have already generated over 120,000 messages to Congress about net neutrality, which is really incredible. And I'm sure you might have heard headlines yesterday that the net neutrality repeal just went into effect, which is true, and we are continuing that fight in the courts. We have sued the FCC on one petition and joined a couple of other medium-sized companies in filing another petition to sue the FCC. So we are continuing along with that fight in the courts as well as in Congress, continuing to push the message in the House. Other things that we do is organize really awesome seller fly-ins. This is a picture of Senator Mark Warner high-fiving with a bunch of awesome Etsy sellers on a recent seller fly-in. That was amazing because when policymakers actually hear directly from Etsy sellers about their business challenges, it becomes less of like a theoretic and philosophical argument and more of a real person saying their real story. So it's another way that we keep commerce human. And lastly, this is the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We filed an amicus brief in the Supreme Court and are eagerly awaiting the results of that decision about internet sales tax, which is a huge issue for our sellers, and we're making sure to advocate for a policy solution that works no matter where our sellers are in the world. Happy to talk more about all of that and answer a lot of questions in the Q&A, and I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.